Hello, thought I'd do a quick little live stream test here. All right, folks. I felt like doing these live streams because I didn't get to demonstrate this past weekend at the Carson convention because, of course, it was canceled. And these demonstrations are always fun to do, and it's always kind of fun to have an excuse, to sit down and stamp, right? So, anyway, hello, good to see you again. I'm stamping here on to a surface we call stamp board, okay? And if you've heard of that, or if you haven't heard of it, what this is a hardboard panel, and it has what they call a soft clay surface on there. I mean, it's not soft to the touch, but it's workable in that we can stamp into it. It's not like a hard glazed tile or something like that that would require specialty media to adhere to it. So stamp board is just a renamed um, surface that they call clay board in the art world, okay? And it accepts all kinds of different media from things like pastels, all kinds of different paints, oil paints, etc. And they're museum quality and archival, okay? They're completely acid-free, and a lot of painters use them for their surfaces, just like they would use canvases or something like that. In fact, they do have ones that are called gesso board. So instead of the clay, they have gesso on there. All right, so I don't know if any of you have ever seen this before. If you have, I don't know, comment down in the comment section. If you haven't seen it before, maybe let me know. But anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp onto the surface right here. I haven't used this for a while because I stopped carrying it. As a matter of fact, let me do something on this surface right here and prep it for the impressions to come afterwards, okay? It's just a lot easier to just lay down some colors on this and to go back into it with some different tools we call scraper tools or scratch knives, and those are really fun to use. Being that this is a clay surface and is workable, it's real similar to scratch board, so you can come in here and you can scratch back into the surface, leaving making subtractive marks, and that's pretty much the only time that I know in stamping where you can do that, unless we're doing some sort of bleaching technique, with chemicals, okay? All right, so that being said, now this is something that I've done with kids as young as 4 years old as well, but we do it on the 2" by 2" panels, and these are just so much fun, and I'll show you how to do that one too. All right, now I don't carry stamp board anymore, but they have it still on websites like Dick Blick. That's an art supply company, if you don't know them. Really great company and really great prices, and so on and so forth. I've had nothing but good to great customer service from them. We get all of our art supplies for the middle school art program at my son's school from Dick Blick, and I happen to be the supplies coordinator for the art program this year. It's a total volunteer art program, just of all the funding cuts and everything like that. So the PTA funds that art program, but I deal with Dick Blick a lot, and I just check to see if they have stamp board, and they still have it in various configurations. It comes in. I think maybe it's a 1 pound bag of assorted sizes. They have. I don't know if they have it still, but there was ATC sizes. I just kind of started thinking about this material again. I have a lot of the demonstration pieces that Ampersand Art supplied me with because I was the developer of this stamp board incarnation of their products way back when. So I teach this at the various conventions and so on and so forth. But what this has the feeling of is it's somewhere in between, I would say, like if you're applying ink onto it, it's more absorbent than a matte cardstock, but it has the smoothness of something in between a matte cardstock and a glossy cardstock, okay? It's really just a beautiful, beautiful, smooth surface. And they make it that way because people do pen and ink work on here too. They do all kinds of things, washes, every type of media. The only media that doesn't work so much good on it because of that smooth texture or surface quality is media that requires a little bit of tooth, let's say chalks or colored pencil, that type of thing. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of creating this kind of amorphic background with a little bit of an oscillation going from darks and lights and darks and lights and darks because of this lakeside cove that I'll stamp right over the top of it, okay? Now these are really good too. This is a kind of a larger than ATC size. This is, I don't know what size dimension this is, like 3.5 by 5 or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's, I don't know, it's slightly different than that, but that's roughly the size here. But this material also makes for great embellishments. You know how we're always using like pop-up dots to add embellishments to our cards? Well, you can actually add kind of a raised piece because of the thickness of the board, so it's really fantastic for that. And if you spray seal these with like a, you know, a Krylon crystal clear or what I like using is a polyurethane, something that you would spray on furniture pieces. It gives it a really thick coating that's really reminiscent of a glazed fired tile, okay? And if you ever use this material, one of the comments that everyone always tells me about when they've used it and they've given pieces to other people is that they always, the recipients of their cards, even if they are seasoned stampers, they always say, how did you do that little piece? Because they think that they stamped something onto a piece of paper and mounted it on this board, but in actuality, it's just a surface that's tailor-made for just about any media that you want to throw at it. And then if they spray seal it, and you give it that real super glazed look, it looks like they've fired some kind of tile or something like that, like you would with ceramics or something. It's really fantastic. Okay, so adding a couple different colors of values of blue here, okay? It's really absorbing quite a bit. One thing I haven't tried on here too much, or I can't remember if I did, was alcohol inks, but alcohol inks would look, I think, fantastic on here. Things like distress oxides, which I have none of, but I'm thinking this would be kind of an ideal surface for that type of media, too. Okay, let's go with some black here. Now, the darker I make the background, which you don't have to do, the more the reverse marks will show, okay? So when I add my stamped imagery onto this panel right here, this board, we're going to be able to scratch back into this ink that I've laid down to reveal the white of the original board, okay? So it's kind of like scratch, well, it's very much like scratch board in that way. And that makes for a really dynamic surface. The subtractive reverse marks are just a really fun thing to do. And I used to teach classes doing that, and when people got to that point in the development of their scene, I have a feeling, my theory is, I think people are dipping into a different hemisphere of their brain or something like that when you're doing subtractive marks, because the class would get extremely quiet, and it was almost like this period of meditation or something like that for them. That's what it felt like. It's just extremely relaxing. I don't know, it's the quietest classes I ever saw. Okay, let's go back into our image right here. Lakeside Cove Large. Let's just center it right here. I don't know, you can do it higher or lower or something like that. If you're doing a real small piece of board, what I do is I like to go board into stamp. So I turn the stamp upside down and do it that way. But anytime the surface is larger than the stamp, I usually like to go stamp to surface. I'll show you what I mean by surface to stamp with that little small piece there. Okay. We have that there. And in the spirit of Stampscapes University instructions, the latest playlist series for the Stampscapes channel, we're going to do the repetition of imagery using smaller portions for what we want to extend this out to the sides. Okay. So we have that. Okay. It feels really good stamping on this too. There's something to the solid nature of this panel. All right, let's see. Let's go. All my stylus tools, I guess, were packed away in my supplies when I demonstrated a couple weeks ago in Arizona, but let's just use a cosmetic sponge. Okay, now once I get the image already stamped out, what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of shadow areas kind of at the bottom portion of these rocks and in the shadow areas. Okay. It gives your imagery visual weight to add that additional value, darkness, whatever, to certain areas of the imagery. So usually it's the bottom portions of it. So I hope you can kind of see this in this blurry kind of live broadcast. Alright. So hopefully you can see a little bit of a difference there. I added some tone right at the base there. So I'm taking this wedge right here and just kind of running it right along down there and kind of dabbing it around like so. Okay? Just to give it a little bit of visual weight, because we're going to do the opposite when we do the highlighting on these rocks in here. Okay? So we're adding darkness to the base of the rocks, and we'll add lightness to the tops of them. Okay? It's a really fun surface to use. Okay, let's see here. Let's just keep it real simple. Let's add some additional reeds here. In our foreground, that'll give me something to highlight if I want to. Okay. All right. The fun begins. Okay. Now, with the use of the material called scratchboard, you get these tools, these nibs called, they're called scratch knives or scraper tools. They go by many different names. Well, I don't know, a couple different names at least. All right, these two, this one's a little worn out right here. But this one right here is kind of like this real fine, sharp, it almost looks like a spear tip or something like that. Okay, now I can touch this, it's not going to cut me or something like that, but we're using that mostly for that real narrow tip. It gives us a real uniform, even, sharp line, okay? Now this one's my favorite right here. It has more of this, it's like a scoop, okay? There's a little bit of a, sharper tip like that, but it's more of a rounded tip. And again, it's like a spoon. Imagine a spoon that you've taken onto a file and you've sharpened it like that. You've just kind of made the edge kind of filed down so it kind of gives you a sharper edge, okay? Now, I do use like knife sharpening tools to sharpen this up once in a while. All you do is you just take it and buff it a little bit and it's ready to go. Okay, this one you don't need to. All right, let's see if I can zoom in here. All right, I hope that's in focus. If it's not, let me know. All right, so the lighting is coming from above. All right, and we've darkened the bottom side of these rocks in here. Okay, now I have the spoon-shaped one right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly start scratching away at some of that color and tone and black that I've laid down on these rocks. And I just do it slowly because I want to have complete control over how much ink I remove. So what we're doing is we're removing that top surface of ink. Now if I just scrape in a little bit, I'm just scratching in a little bit and illuminating that rock just a touch. But I mean, I can keep scratching and reveal the white of the board if I want to. So it just depends on how much lighting you want to reveal in a given area. If you ever remove too much, it's just simple enough to go back in, tone right back over it, and just scratch into it again. Okay? You kind of want to just gently scratch along. The idea is, I mean, we're removing some of that clay surface. Like I said, it's a kind of a soft, workable clay surface. But the idea is just to remove as little of that clay as possible and just to reveal that surface and to remove mostly that ink. So I'm barely scratching on there. I'm not using very much pressure. I mean, you certainly could if you wanted to go for some kind of like German expressionistic type of look to your pieces. You see that lighting kind of coming around? How much that really kind of animates those rocks in terms of kind of lending themselves to a three-dimensional type of look. You can illuminate them in different values. You can have some lighting on them, but have it very delicate. Or you can reveal a lot more and have that rock stand out more. So it really just depends on what you're going after. Right, so see that right there? It really, I don't know, it really brings out the forms and volumes. I feel that there's I don't know, a sensual kind of nature to something when you have this kind of this type of soft light hitting objects like that to reveal their forms and whatnot. Okay. All right. And let's add some down here in the water as well, okay? There's these kind of striations in the design itself. You see these kind of, let's see if I can get this to focus here. These little ripples in here. Sorry. Okay, so there's these little striations within the shadows here, okay? And I have it back here in the distance too. So what I do is I'm just going to go in and reiterate those lines within here again. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's the seamless nature of the scenes is kind of at the root, of kind of what the genre is all about, you know, just kind of really creating a situation where the viewers of our pieces really can't see or can't tell the difference between, you know, where one image ends and the other one begins. And then for me, that's kind of at the base of scenic stamping, but for me, the thing that I'm always searching for in my pieces, in the end result, is I'm always looking for this kind of emotional quality, um, an experience, I guess you can say. You want to transmit kind of mood more than, I don't know, than that's a tree and that's a rock or something like that. You want there to be an overall kind of um, sensation other than just strictly the visual. And what I'm getting at is that I believe that's where lighting kind of comes into play. So there's always this kind of this little simple thing that I'm doing, and it's really happening in all of my different scenes, no matter what media I'm working with. So if you do this, I have this in a video too, but I call it easy scenic lighting, I think I called it. But what we have here is there's an area of light up here, and there's a little area of dark right here, and then there's light down here again. If you go light, dark, light, in 95% of your scenes, that is sufficient to depict lighting. And then something like this surface right here, I can go in and I can kind of reveal more areas of light like this, okay? And what I'm doing here is I'm revealing more areas of light in the lighter areas, but out here in the shadows, you kind of, you know, there wouldn't be as much highlighting on some of these rocks, so you reveal a little bit less, okay? You see that little bit right there? It makes it look a little bit like three-dimensional. Yeah, Patricia, sorry, yeah, I'm just, I need to plan these live vids out. I just felt like logging on right now and testing it out. I'm testing out the call. Is the sound okay for everyone? I know these are a little bit blurrier than, you know, than certainly a recorded one that I've, you know, for the lessons that I've posted, but I'm trying to work out all the little bugs with sound and things like that. Okay, but look at this up in the sky too. Oh, okay, now see how I'm doing these subtractive types of marks like this? One of the things that they also use for clayboard, and you can use it on Stampboard. Remember, Stampboard's the same thing if you just logged on. Things like sandpaper of varying grits, steel wool is another tool that they use to do these subtractive marks. You can get some really soft removals of color with that. But look at what this is doing. I mean, this is adding kind of texture as well as lighting in this given area, okay? Now, because of the subtractive type of quality you can do on your pieces, it's practically, I would say, it's probably the most forgiving surface possible in art or stamping. Like, for example, if I didn't like this whole scene, okay, I could take this whole scene and grab a piece of paper or a sander, and we can sand this all off, okay? It's not, there's not an endless amount of clay that's built up on here, okay? And eventually you're going to get through it, but there's enough on there where if you didn't gouge into it, you can sand the scene off and then just start over, okay? See, I'm just kind of barely scratching right here. You can do cross-hatching if you know about drawing and things like that. You can try all kinds of different looks on here, okay? Okay, I'm still with my rounded tip right here, but check this out. Okay, this is one thing that everyone always loved to do. Okay, we're just going to take this, and you just go vertical with it like this. And you do a little scratch like that. A little twirl, I should say, not scratch. Deeper you go. It'll leave a little bit of a bigger dot. you don't want to go too far because you don't want to scratch all the way down to this board underneath this clay. But look at those little stars like that. Let's see if I can focus in here. See that? Okay. So let's add a few more of these up here. You can do additive processes on here. Just because you can scratch these away doesn't mean you can't add, you know, gel pen dot in there as well, okay? But I like to use the board in terms of its potential qualities. Is everyone else getting that kind of a disturbance in the sound, or is that coming through fine? Sorry about that, Barrett. I need to find out things like, you know, connection speeds, if everyone's hearing the same thing or what. Or maybe it's the devices, you know. Okay, can you see that there? I put some the reflections of those stars down into my water. I don't know, they could be fireflies too or something like that. Okay, now this is the more pointed tip right here, okay? And this will give me a very definitive scratch on here. Let me see if I can show this on this video here. Let me see if I can, I'm going to move my tripod down a little bit. Okay, let's see if I'm focused in here. Okay. Okay, this is the, yeah, sorry about that fuzziness. I don't know if there's a way, or if it could be my connection too. It could just be the live broadcast. I don't know. It could be my bandwidth. I'm not sure. Anyways, I hope you can at least understand me here, or at least see enough. I'm going to try to work out all these little things. I need to research it, though. That's why I haven't gone with this in a long time. But anyways, this is this, okay, if you just logged on, there's a kind of a more spoon-shaped style of scratch knife. And this is a sharp one right here. And if you just logged on to, this is called stamp board that I'm scratching into, and I've done the scene on. But I'm going to take the pointed one right here, and I just usually select one of these little dots up here that I've kind of added in first with a spoon-shaped one. And we'll go for more of that kind of real twinkly style of star. Okay, see, I always do it kind of a downward motion like that. And then I'm going to come up here and do that from this way. Okay, and then come this way. I can do this movement more naturally than going like this and this and this. I think the star kind of looks a little bit ragged when I do that. I kind of try to taper those lines as well. And I hope this live video is at least, I know it's fuzzy, but I hope it's at least clear enough where you can see that little star right there. So we have a 4-point star going on right here. Okay? And then I do those secondary little lines, and I make them a little bit smaller, okay? So it's like, I'm not doing this line like this and up. I'm kind of going like, you know, like a pricking something, okay? Like that. And I can go over it again like that, too. It doesn't have to be in one swoop, you know. See that? Isn't that fun right there? I mean, it's the smallest, well, it's not the smallest element in the scene, and these little stars are, but that's a pretty small element compared to the overall. But doesn't it make for a great focal point, though? I mean, it really stands out. And that's one of those things that's really good about a surface like this in Stampboard. It can really it opens up the possibilities, okay? But now let's do something else with this knife here, okay? The scratch knife, all right? We have center lighting in here, okay? And let's scratch into some of the trees that are facing that light. And I hope you can see this. This one's going to be even more subtle. Well, thanks so much for logging on, to all of you. Glad we can follow up here, Candy, with some further, I don't know, whatever live demonstrations. I'm so glad about the internet. I'm not glad about the internet in terms of, there's hardly any, actual stores anymore, but, and just in terms of the access people can have. All right, let me see if I can show you this, and I hope this shows up here. There's a lag time, by the way, of like 10 seconds between when I do something and when it shows up on the video, but I hope you can see on the sides of the trees, facing the light source. I mean, you can say that star is a light source too, but so on the left-hand sides of these trees, I put in these little scratches, okay? So on the sides of these trees, we'll put the scratches on the highlights on the right side of the trees, okay? Because they're being illuminated from the right, okay? So I just take this like this, and it's a little prick motion like that, and what I'm doing is I'm scratching back into those branches of the Lakeside Cove impression, okay? And it makes for those real subtle marks. If no one has seen Stampboard, not that this would be a selling point of it, and I'm not selling this stuff anyways, I'm just I love this material, but it always astounds people because, if you give this card to someone, and these look beautiful when you mount them on on a card, and it's this, glazed looking finished piece. If you spray them, it looks like a glazed tile again, but it's really fantastic. Okay, now let's take the sharp one right here, and let's do a little bit of a sharp highlight here, right on tops of those rocks right there. It's perfect for little detailed areas, and I doubt that you'll be able to see this little subtle mark. I'll go a little bit more extreme so that maybe you can tell in this broadcast, this fuzzy looking, sounding broadcast right here. Kind of where I'm putting these little marks. Okay. Oh, and I was mentioning earlier when I stamped out these reeds in the foreground. Let's go and add a little bit of a highlight to these. Now this one right here, I turn it upside down because I can do this downward stroke like this much easier than I can go like this. This is a very unnatural movement, but this is a natural movement, with your fingers like that. So I'm going to go like this, and I don't try to stay exactly on these reeds, but I'll just kind of go in the general motion of it, okay? Good. Let's see, can you see that there? I put in those little scratches right in here. Oh, Norway. Thanks for joining from Norway. And good night. Sweet dreams. Dream about this location. Thanks for joining in. Let's see these little reeds like that. See how that really to me, it looks a little bit more three-dimensional. And it kind of reiterates the lighting on them like that. You can see the difference between here and here. Now let's put some on this side too. And like I said, if you don't like any parts of it, just go back in and tone right back over them, and then you won't see those highlights anymore. Sometimes I go a little bit too far because it's just so fun to add them in, but sometimes I think, oh my gosh, that made it look too busy. So or I can subdue them instead of a white mark. I can tone them in and make it more of a diffused highlight, okay? All right. There's this little powdery types of crumbs on here. It's almost like a powder from kind of scratching back into this and removing it. So that's those kind of little residual marks that you get. But let's take a look at this and see what we have here. Okay. See this board like that? Now, if I spray this with a polyurethane or a crystal clear or something like that, those colors in there are going to look much more saturated and deep than what this looks like, even freshly stamped, because this clay surface really dries fast because it's absorbent, and again, it's made out of clay, so it really dries fast. So that's pretty much what it's going to look like, but they look so much better when sprayed, and they look just absolutely beautiful. And one of the things that I like to do, I don't have a pad here, but I like to take like a metallic pad, a pigment ink metallic pad, and what I do on these boring edges like this is I just dab this right into a pad, and I'll give this a little bit of I like metallics, like a gold metallic, and where you kind of squeeze it into the pad a little bit, a lot of it kind of goes over the edge, so it gives it a real natural framing. And then this board here, this board where it's revealed here on the side, is kind of more finished looking. And I don't know, you would do that before you sprayed it, because if you sprayed it, you might not stick to it. So you dab into it like that, and it looks like a really fantastic piece. And again, this is, you know, a nice hardboard panel, so it will stick out, I don't know, like a 2/6, I don't know, like I don't know if it's an eighth of an inch. It might be an eighth of an inch, though. It's kind of like, it feels like masonite, okay? Is what this feels like. Okay, so anyways, if you're with us still, thanks again for joining in. If you've just joined in, we're doing something on stamp. But let me show you how fast this can go, though, okay? I'm going to do a real fast piece, and I'll show you the piece that I do with preschoolers, kindergartners. It could be with anyone. We did this with adults, too, in the booth, but we can do this panel right here in a matter of, I don't know, a couple minutes, okay? Here's what I do. This is a 2x2 inch panel, okay? And what I do with people that are doing this scene is I just tell them to, let me see, let me go with I'll go with the smaller Lakeside Code for this one, although you could use the bigger one and just use that center section right there. But let's go with the small one. I'll show you what I did with the kids and adults in the booth. 3 values of blue: light blue, medium blue, darker blue. Doesn't have to be Marvin's, okay? I tell them to ink up their whole board with the lightest one, okay? And let me get a applicator here. Second ink right here. What I do is I tell them to imagine they've placed like a nickel or dime in the middle of this board, and I tell them to ink into the scene up to that point of the nickel or dime. I'll do a dime on this one, okay? So I tell them that, you know, because kids can relate to that. Usually by that time they know their penny, nickel, dime. I don't know, you can tell them a penny too. Now, I don't know how many people have seen like 50-cent pieces, you know, like the kids these days, or silver dollars. But your next color, what we're going to do is we're going to ink up, imagine we put down a silver dollar or something like that in here, a 50-cent piece, you know, kind of a larger coin, okay? And we're going to ink up to that point right here, okay? It does not have to be perfect either. They could be, I'm getting kind of choppy marks on here, you know, like the edges showing with this. So it doesn't have to be beautifully blended together or anything like that, okay? All right, so something like that. But what we have here, you know, when we were talking about lighting earlier, is that you have a completely, you know, full glow right here. You have the lighter color, you have the medium color, and the darker color on the perimeter. It kind of creates this nice vignette. Okay, now for mine, I think I would have kids just kind of stop right there, I think. I don't know if I had them go to black. I don't think I did, but let's try that right here. I like the way it frames the piece a little bit more. And the darker you take your perimeters, the lighter that light is going to seem by contrast. So we're just adding this in, mostly on the four corners, okay? But try to retain that range of tones by not going too far into the piece and thus covering up all of your previous color that you've just added in there. Have that color represented in there. So you see this nice glow in here? And that makes a really nice statement in terms of our lighting, okay? So even on a really small piece like this, a 2 by 2 inch, call them panels or boards or whatever, that's sufficient to represent what will represent kind of our source of light and a reflected light when it comes to an image such as this one right here, okay? Okay, now this stamp is bigger than this board. So I could go like this, but I can't see it, you know what I mean? So because this board is stiff, I prefer taking board to stamp like that, okay? So I've inked this up, and I'll just roughly add this in the center like this. Get plenty of pressure just like you would stamping stamp into, you know, paper or cardstock or whatever you would be stamping it into. And there we have our little scene, okay? Now, even for grade schoolers, preschool, and kindergarten, I had them work with the tools like this. So I gave them each a tool. I don't think I gave them the sharp one. Not that it would be dangerous, you know. They're all safe with it and whatnot, as long as they're watched. But what we did was I had them go, and I had them scratch up some highlights on some of their rocks. And let me see, let me zoom in like this. See how I'm always doing this kind of the downward stroke like this? So I turn whatever I'm working with in the direction that's going to be the most conducive for this very comfortable type of mark. Reveal a little bit of lighting like this. So I have some highlighting on those rocks in there. And what the kids really love doing is adding these stars into it. So I don't think I had them do the twinkly one, dexterity and whatnot, but I mean, it certainly could be done. Isn't that a fun little piece? One of the things that's really nice about these pieces too is if any of you have ever done, I think what they call spotlighting or something like that, it's where you stamp out kind of a larger scene, and maybe you do it all in black and white or something like that. But you take just one colored piece and you place it into that. Let me see if I have any of those stamp sketches that I've been doing for my, like this one right here. I don't know, this one wouldn't be a great example, but see, you can place, oh, sorry. You can place this like in here. Or, I mean, you can do it in a couple different areas. You can just take a bit of this one right here, stamp it out fully, and then take a smaller stamp tile and then place it right on top here. You could leave the rest, you know, black and white like this. It's just kind of a foundation. But you'd have this one piece kind of sticking out three-dimensionally from the same impression that you've stamped onto the surface. So it's really fun. It'd be perfect for this lakeside cabin in this one if you stamped out that part of lakeside cabin and just kind of mounted it right there. So these are really perfect for embellishments, but let's go in and finish this one off here. I could have stamped this before too, but let's go with a VersaFine black. It's nice and dark. Okay. Let's see. Look what a fun little piece like this. Does anyone know the term inchies? Or have any of you ever stamped inchies before? But they make these the stamp board product in inchy formats, and what that is it's a 1 inch by 1 inch little piece, and a lot of people were doing that at one time. They were stamping inchies, okay, and then Ampersand Art came out with their versions of inchies, which were 1 by 1 inch pieces, but it was really fun. Sometimes we stamped scenes into a 1 inch little panel, and you might think, oh my god, that's impossible, but you can put a couple different elements into it, you know. I mean, you wouldn't stamp something like, you know, this into it. I could certainly do a piece like this, though, just doing the front of the chapel or something like that. Yeah, Candy, inchies became really big at one time. A lot of people were doing things like stamping on things like dominoes. That became really popular at one time. Then it was ATCs, so we had these kind of different formats from our usual, I don't know, standard card-sized pieces that everyone was used to. And then it seemed like you know, the trends kept getting smaller and smaller. Not that everyone was doing it, but it was the options were kind of opening up, and the inchies became one of those little things. And it was kind of fun. You'd see inchies everywhere. For a while there, you saw a lot of ATCs, the artist trading cards, and what people would do is they would stamp out, you know, whatever, a big bag of them, 25 of them, and like button trading at, you know, Disneyland or something like that. They would trade their ATC cards. Oh, here's a piece of the stamp board right here. It's faded a little bit like this because I didn't spray it, so I still need to spray it. But here's a barn and the moon behind it. Again, it's a 2x2. But you know how I was talking about the metallic perimeters? This is one where I dabbed it into a gold metallic pigment ink. But look at this kind of gold edge to it, and see, that would really make a nice kind of embellishment, you know, on a card or whatnot. Now these right here, because of the thickness and stiffness and whatever, I mean, you can use those for embellishments. You can use these on cards and so on and so forth. But one of the things that these ones are also really nice about, and you know, my son was in preschool and kindergarten a long time ago. He's in 8th grade now, but some of the kids that were in his class told me that they still have these pieces that they stamped out in, you know, preschool or kindergarten still on their refrigerator. So what I did was I had a little piece of paper a little bit larger than the 2x2. I think I gave them kind of like glitter paper or something like that. It was real stiff though, and what they did was we mounted these pieces onto that paper, and then we had those, you guys know about those magnetic adhesive strips. It comes in a big roll. So we had little strips of like 2-inch magnetic stickers, and we'd put them to the back of it, and so the kids would give this to their parents. I think it was a present for, or one of the presents for their parents on Christmas. But these make for great magnets. You can put those adhesive pins on the back, so you can pin it on clothes or whatever. Oh, and I know a ton of jewelry makers that, going back to that inchy format size, but a lot of jewelry makers used to buy this stuff by the bag, and they were typically buying those little inchies. So I don't know what they did with them. I think I saw some photographs in some of the the different magazines where people have used inchies. I don't know if they kind of, softened the edges about this a little bit or whatnot. Um, and speaking of sizes of this, a lot of times people used to say, can you cut these? And you really can't unless you have, something that can cut, like wood or that type of thing. You wouldn't cut this with like a mat knife or something like that. It's much too hard of a panel. And if you don't have the right types of toolings, that clay that's on here, as you're slicing through it, okay, with the saw, it might kind of shatter that thin layer of clay that's on there. So you would just buy the size that you want, and it came in a lot of different configurations and sizes. One of my favorite ones used to be the rounds and ovals, but Ampersand Art stopped selling those because I think they might have been losing money on those bags because it costs so much to have these things die cut into those sizes, but those were really beautiful, different sizes for us as stampers to use. But anyway, let's see, what did you say there? CM, I did inchies and still have a few. Oh, you have some of the 1-inch stamp boards. Yeah. Oh, purchased from me. You seem to be saving and hoarding them. Well, if they're not making them too much anymore, I don't blame you, but, oh, you have the 2-inch, and yeah, the 2-inch ones are really fantastic, but if I'm not mistaken, okay, I think they had about 4 different sizes on Dick Blick on their website, and I'd imagine they have quite a few because that's a pretty big company like that. Yeah, sorry about that on the iPhone. I think it has to do with connections too, and it might have to do with my connection as well as your connection, sticker lady, like a Wi-Fi or something like that, or data. I'm not really quite sure of how this, but I'll try to find the ideal resolution and get everything kind of set up on this side for these live broadcasts. But yeah, I'll try to apologize for not knowing a lot more about this, but I don't know. I'm kind of adding all this. I want to go back to some of these live broadcasts that we were doing before. Let me try something right here. We've been doing the subtractive process on these panels right here, okay? Let's go in and do some additive types of marks on here as well. You know how I like to use pigment ink, white pigment ink on pieces. Let's go with a Q-tip right here. And let's try to add some additional kind of soft marks into here. I really love softer elements. I love having a range of textures within a given piece. We have a lot of sharp things in stamping. We want crisp impressions. We want we don't want our images to be blurry, as stampers, right? But having kind of some softer elements within the piece, purposefully, we don't want to have kind of, soft, blurry types of things, for sure. But let's go into this and add like this little mist. And when you're doing that, you're saying that lighting is coming into the scene. And when we talk about kind of an emotional type of mood within a given piece, this is my theory on that, okay? I feel that when we're aware of the space between objects, like the air between us and the trees back there, I don't know, it tends to take on this different kind of emotional quality. It's when we're aware of, the space between and the connection between all kinds of different things, not to get too poetic or anything like that, but, it's like when, at sunsets, when the dust and, let's face it, the pollution in the air or moisture in the air is illuminated by, bright, warm light, we're more aware of that lighting surrounding us. We feel engulfed by, something and surrounded by it. I feel like that's when, I think that's why, in addition to it being a beautiful visual, I think that's why people like sunsets. It feels more kinesthetic. It's not just a visual thing. Okay, so that being said, for something like this, when you have this little mist like this, it means that we're aware of this moisture in the air and it is being kind of illuminated by the light. So again, it introduces kind of something beyond visuals, which is crafting and stamping. I mean, it's kinesthetic. You're working with textiles and things like that, sewing, fabrics, things like that. I mean, for us, and paper crafting too. Papers are tactile as well. But this is kind of visually tactile. When you add that element into it, it becomes more of a, I don't know, it adds this different kind of emotional quality to it because it involves more of our senses. Okay, so let's take a look at that star up there. I love that star just as is, but let's kind of make it glow just a touch, okay? This is like what they call dry brushing into it. But look at that little glow to that star. So even the most, let me see, I'm too close here. Let me see if I can focus in here. So that, even in the most distant little element within the scene, we can add that same kind of tactile quality to it. So you have that down here, in this foreground area on Earth. You have it up there in the heavens as well, or something like that, you could say. And I think that just changes, or it adds to the spirit of the scene like this. Let me just do a few of these little stars like that. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, I don't know. Hopefully you can. It's just a blurry little dot on this blurry broadcast. Sorry. Maybe
Everything's
everything's blurry. Kind of adding this wherever you want. Sometimes I have it on some of these trees, okay? It makes some of those trees look a little bit more distant too by making them a little bit lighter in value. So this is a really easy tweak to your impressions where you don't have to do anything to the impressions, but you can go in after the fact and you can soften them, lighten them up in certain areas, and add visual depth to them by making them lighter in value, okay? So this is a fun little thing. So you can say we're doing very crisp subtractive marks with our scratch knives, okay? And this is going in and adding a soft type of light element into it. It's an additive mark instead of subtractive, but they work hand in hand in conjunction with one another perfectly. I think it's in harmony, and it makes for a nice range of marks within your scene. There's the different textural quality, and you have a nice textural range, okay? Not to get too technical or anything like that, I'm doing it because I think it looks cool, so just trying to put into words what I think is happening here. Oh, glad that it's looking better in terms of the focus right there. I'm trying to spend a little bit more time too. Before, when I went like this, I don't think I was giving it time to focus, like sometimes it has to grab and then I can kind of bring it in like that. So learning, hopefully, I'm a slow learner, just so everyone knows too. And I have a really bad memory too, so I hope I can remember that. Remind me if you watch future vids, just say, hey, that's not, try to focus in better or something like that, Or you can say, do a better job in general. Or you say you're doing a lousy job, I'm fine with that. Okay, but let's take a look here, okay? I don't know, can you see the difference between kind of before and after the pigment ink right here? This is just really fun stuff. One time someone mentioned, Kevin spends more time with the details, with the kind of the embellishments than he does the actual stamping. And I'd have to say, that might be true. I kind of laughed when I said that it was in the Stampscapes 2 group. I think Karen said that. And I thought, you know what, you're really right, because I really love doing these little stars and things like that, the highlights on the water, the little mist in the background. I get completely lost in that process right there. Little highlights down here. This right here, I think that might be a little bit too light. So let me go in with some sponging, and I'll just sponge over some of that. And I'll make those highlights within those reeds just a little bit more subdued and darker. I can even come into it with, let's do it with a blue, okay? Or, this is one of the fun things too. I'm just kind of remembering some of this. I forget a lot of this stuff, but let's say some of those stars I want varied. I don't want them to all be white like that. Well, this is a bluish tinged scene. And if I go over some of those white stars with this blue and I sponge in some blue into them, then I have stars of varying values too. So some of these stars could be blue, okay? So that kind of adds to the overall, and like I said, this is looking really kind of, it looks a little bit dull to me, okay? But believe me, if you spray this, or when I spray it, I'll do a spray sealing video, and I'll spray this one, and you will see just how much of the intensity and the layering of all those colors will really pop out. The contrast between, let's see here, the contrast between, here we go, some of those little scratch marks in here. I know I can barely see it right here myself, but the contrast between some of these little scratch marks that I put into it will become a lot more apparent usually because the darkers get darker, okay? So one scratch mark that's a little bit more subtle because it's scratched into kind of a grayish tinge, that might look more black, so that reverse scratch mark will stand out a little bit more. But anyways, yeah, see, we can make these, you know, we can do little scratch marks on here. I was just kind of showing you what I did with the kids with this one right here, but you can add little refinements on this, and this can be like this little world unto itself. I don't know, I want to do something like that coming up for my little Easter Christmas cards or whatnot. But yeah, these are really fun to do. So anyways, does anyone have any questions or comments? You said you had some of those 2-inch inchies. Did you used to use some stamp board, and did you use your scraper tools? How did you use your surfaces, your stamp board? And when did you get them? You probably got them, what, 10, 15 years ago, I'm guessing? And that's when we used to, you know, sell a lot of those ones, and we used to demonstrate those all over the place. Here's a no, maybe this is a 5-inch one right here. This one's really not known as stamp board, but they call it Clayboard Smooth. Let me see if I have them here. Okay, this one right here was Decor Board Box, okay? And look at this, I forgot all about it, but they used, yeah, I don't know if you can tell. But that is a stamped scene there. That's the old mill. And that's my, yeah, actually I did that box right there. So I knew they had that. I forgot it was on this cover though, but that's the Lakeside Cove scene right here. You probably can't see it, this is so small, but I did that one on a sunset color scheme. And on the inside portion of this lid right here, it's recessed, so I did this little recessed little scene in there. I put this little kind of dried flower. Let me show you here. I have it. Now this one's not stamp board, but see these dried flowers right here in this scene? I added these little touches right here in that little recessed area of this box, so it kind of made for like a shadow box, sorry about that glare, shadow box type of thing. And this decor board, and I think they still sell these boxes, right here, the lid to this box is Clayboard Smooth, so you can stamp on top of this, you know, box and make it yourself. You know, this is just a label right here, but this box right here. And then you add the hinges on yourself. the hinges are inside this box right here. Oh, and here's a couple other boxes that I made way back in. I don't even know if I still have. No. Okay, I completely forgot. Okay, here's a couple other things right. Here's this box. I had them right up on my shelf. Wow, they're going yellow. It's the inks, though. It's not the board itself. But here's my lighthouse right here, stamped in here. And I don't know if you can see, but I've done a lot of little, yeah, you'll never be able to tell this, but I've done a lot of little scratchy marks like this into these clouds around here. And I'm sure there's some splashing waves in here with those little dots in here and whatnot. Okay, so and this opens up like this. There's a note here or something. A secret note. I'll have to read that. This is really fun. And then I finished the sides. They sell them unfinished, so I stain the sides like that. But this really makes for fun stuff. And see this right here? This panel is just your clay board. Yeah, it's this panel right here. It's this exact size right here. It's just been glued to this lid right here, so it really makes for a pretty cool project. What a lot of people would do, though, is they would buy this one. I'm just remembering this. They would buy this one, and there were some other boards that fit in here, maybe 4" by 4", and they would do coasters, so this would be like a coaster set, and they would have that in there, and they would do each one of those coasters with whatever kind of theme they wanted. They could be related to the top of it or not. So it was really cool. Here's another one using some stamps by some other companies. Here's my cloud stamp, Seaside Cove and Ledge. But then I put these two stamps here from, I think that was Gumbo Graphics and 100 Proof Press right here, into this scene. Just monochromatic black and white. Oh my gosh, I'm rich. I didn't know that money was in there, so, kind of knick-knack types of things. And here's a piece right here that I haven't mounted onto the rest of the board. I don't know. I guess I stamped that out and kind of just forgot about it or whatever. But this is a crooked path and the tree cluster small, sedge filler going out in the distance like that. But when you talk about grasses, here, let's see. All these little scratch marks, I really got lost in the process of adding all those little scratch marks. Those little highlights right in here where it's lighter, that's going in there and scratching it away, just like I did on that scene below. A lot of little pebbles, and oh, here's the reeds again, used same as here, okay? And with those little highlights, and I can tell those little highlights are on those things like that, but anyways, just a little bit of a panel. And you see, when I was talking about that recessed area right here, this is the perfect place. I mean, you'd stamp something on, a piece that would fit in here, and then you can place it in there like that. And the fact that this is a three-dimensional, object is perfect for doing like shadow boxing types of applications to this format right here. I like putting little three-dimensional things in front here, and they can sit right on this little ledge, or you can just kind of glue them in there, and it was really kind of a really cool type of piece, that you can do, but, a much more kind of expensive project than, a single card, but, they really made some great gifts, too, like that. You can do that, like I said, it could be a coaster set or whatever. And you can do what they call sequential aesthetics, you can do something on the front that's related to the interior, you have something else, down there or whatnot that you can add in there. You can do things on the inside, etc., etc. But just some really fun stuff. Okay, anyway, you didn't get the box, but you remember that. Yeah. I was using stamp board quite a long time. And it was fun because I got to go with Ampersand Art, who makes this surface right here, and I'd be demonstrating at those CHA shows for I knew a lot of clients, through stamping, but they would come along and they would take a look at what was being done with the stamps onto the stamp board, and a lot of them picked up stamp board. And I don't know. Luckily, it's still out there. I don't know how long they're going to keep making it, so if you like this service, I would recommend picking up some that are out there, from the different resellers. You might just kind of Google it or look at whatever search engine you use and look up stamp board. The way they sell, the way they spell it is with a B-O-R-D, okay? They don't write B-O-A-R-D with any of their services like Clayboard or anything like that. But I don't know, that always drove me nuts because when people are looking it up, they're going to look up stamp board with a B-O-A-R-D. But that's their kind of their own little naming convention that they use. But anyway, all right. So thanks so much for joining me on the live broadcast again. Fun stuff. I always like interacting and finding out things from other stampers as well. I'm certainly not an authority on a lot of different media out there. In fact, someone just told me about VersaFine. All I needed to do was read the back of this, but I never did. But I didn't know this was an oil-based pigment ink, so maybe that's why they can get such a fine, detailed impression from it. I have a feeling I told this person that maybe it's because oil, they can have a much finer pigment in solution than maybe water. So maybe that's what gives this one such a crisp impression. But I think when I've sprayed VersaFine before, it might have blurred a little bit because solvents, can blur oils like that even after they dry. So I need to be careful when spraying. Which one is the one that I used? I think I used the VersaFine with this small piece right here. But anyway, if you have any questions about stamp board, you can look on the Stampscapes website. I have that section there, and it has this gallery. There's a few different videos in that section there. You can't find stamp board for sale there anymore, but I'm going to leave up that section just because it was so, integral with what we were doing at one point in time, and I have a lot of content up there for anyone that might be curious about it still. So anyway, so signing off. Thanks again. If any of you want to see something done in a live broadcast, something specific or a specific technique, at any given time, just drop me an email or whatnot, and we'll try to get something going, and we'll try to schedule it too at some point in time. This is just kind of an impromptu thing because I just felt like stamping and stamping maybe with some other people. So anyways, we should do a stamp along too sometime. Maybe we can kind of get a grouping of stamps together. We'll keep it simple, but maybe we can stamp out a scene together. So I can't see what you guys are doing, but maybe you can type along and tell me to slow down or explain something a little bit better or whatnot. Maybe we'll do something with like light beams or something like that. We'll keep it simple with a few different stamps, and we'll just say what ink pads to, what colors to have ready at the ready, and we'll come up with some scenes and or a scene, and you can tell me how it's going, and we can kind of work things out like that. So anyways, thanks again. Signing off. Thanks as always for joining me.